Fantasy Football Week 11, it starts tonight. 97.3 ESPN has the coverage, of course, of the Thursday night football. And joining us now to talk a little bit more about Week 11, it's Minnesota. No, not Minnesota. Minnesota, Chicago is the Sunday night. Oh, Packers, Seattle.
Where are you, man?
Sorry. Minnesota, Chicago play. I feel like the Packers have been on prime time like every week.
So much.
They're on all the time, but they're playing tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's bring in Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com to help you get your Week 11 fantasy football lineup set. Some of you are getting ready for the playoffs. Jeff, I've won 6 in a row behind the power of Josh Gordon. So give some players tonight in the Thursday night game. We know with Aaron Rodgers, you always want to get your Packers going, but who should be active tonight?
Well, you can't overlook Aaron Jones because I think he could be a success for the Green Bay to control the ball in a difficult Seattle location. Seattle, maybe Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin. Chris Carson could be back in action, but it seems to be a three-headed monster in the backfield. Rashad Perry's a pickup if he's available. I'd pick him up at the running back spot. And my favorite MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling wide receiver, is going to be on my list every week the rest of the way for Green Bay.
All right, tonight, Thursday night, get your players in. There's a lot of buys this week, which means we're going to have a lot of guys at the end of this conversation. Don't forget, you get your questions in for Jeff, 609-403-0973, with questions for Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com. All right, quarterbacks here. You know, I go through this every week. I've got Mahomes and I've got Breeze on my team. Let's start with a guy like Pat Mahomes against the Rams, though. Is that a favorable matchup? People look at that Rams defense in the offseason, but when push comes to shove, they've not been very good.
Yeah, I can't find a bad matchup for Patrick Mahomes the rest of the way unless they are resting players. I would start Mahomes no matter what. And Breeze, he's still a top 5 quarterback, and the Philly secondary is just a mess right now. So both those guys are top 5 options this week.
All right, let's go to a guy like Andrew Luck. He's quietly been under the radar. People were questioning him early, but is he back on the fantasy scene?
He's a solid quarterback, too, this week against Tennessee. Tennessee is an underrated team, especially on defense, but they're better against the run than the pass. The problem for the Colts is that they seem to be sharing all the tight end action with Doyle and Ebron and other guys getting in the mix. But Luck is spraying around. He's a solid QB2 with upside if you've got a guy on a bye.
Mitchell Trubisky, I don't think you think of him in fantasy, but should you?
I think you should. I think he's a borderline QB1 every week, except this week he's got Minnesota, which is a huge game for the Vikings this week. Whoever wins that game is going to be leading the NFC North at the end of the night. So I like Trubisky. I think he's got upside, especially because he can run, but he's a borderline. He's number 12 quarterback on my list.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's back as the starter. They scored 3 points last week. Does he start against the Giants if he's on your fantasy team?
They scored 3 points, but they had over 500 yards. I'm not sure you could ever do that again, but I think that the Tampa Bay and the Giants, weather permitting, I think that Fitzpatrick will have another big game, another 300-plus yards.
Hey, what if Flacco can't go? Are you intrigued by Lamar Jackson?
I don't think Jackson's going to start. I think Robert Griffin III will start because it's sort of like the Saints. You have Tyson Hill, who's their speedster, he's like the Jackson for Baltimore. The backup there is Teddy Bridgewater for the Saints. RG3 is the backup for Baltimore. They don't want to mix and match because Jackson is not ready to run a game the entire way.
Let's go to running backs. If you have a question for Jeff, 609-403-0973 on the text board. Ryan is compiling all of your fantasy football questions. You mentioned Aaron Jones tonight. You've got what about David Johnson? Had a big game finally last week.
Yeah, and against Oakland, I think everybody against Oakland this week. It's a very weird week. You have lots of bad teams playing bad teams, great teams playing great teams, and mediocre playing mediocre. So not a lot of one-sided matchups. And again, 6 teams on a bye. So this is a good week for Arizona to get their 3rd win against Oakland, who seems to have just mailed it in the rest of the way.
Alex Collins against Cincinnati?
I think so, especially if you've got quarterback issues for the Ravens this week.
Phillip Lindsay is back. Should you have him in the lineup against the Chargers?
I think so. The Chargers are going to move the ball. This is the first time that these two divisional teams have matched up so far. Lindsey is in the offense no matter what, ahead or behind. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He's a solid running back, too, with upside.
What are you doing with Adrian Peterson this week against Houston?
I think you have to put him in there just because of the bye weeks, but he's really at the bottom of my running back 2 list.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. He'll give you some sleepers and guys that he likes, some waiver wire pickups coming up in just a minute. If you have questions for Jeff, 609-403-0973. We've got some text messages coming in for Jeff. Ryan's putting those together. Let's go to wide receiver and check out a couple of names that could be intriguing this week. All right, let's start with, I guess if you have Michael Thomas, you're probably happy this week against the Eagles. What about a guy like Robert Woods? Not on the mix, but Cooper Kupp is out. Does that help a guy like Woods?
With Cooper out, I think that leads Robert Woods is going to be your top guy, along with you've also got Brandon Cooks out there. Those 2 guys will see a lot of action against Kansas City. No question, you start all your Rams and Chiefs this week, but I think the number 1 wide receiver pickup this week has to be Josh Reynolds. He had 2 touchdowns when Kupp last missed action. He gets a lot of talk from the head coach there. He's going to be starting, and they love to run 3 wide receiver sets.
Let's go to Golden Tate. What'd you see from him last week? Do you feel that he is a viable fantasy guy now?
I was not impressed with what they did. They did not work him in well. They had 2 weeks to work him into the offense, and he wasn't even on the field enough. He didn't see enough targets, let alone be on the field enough. So I think Golden Tate, and 2, I actually see him get 30-plus snaps. I'm not going to use him.
All right. What about Amari Cooper? Do you like the way Dallas is using him?
I do, and I think that's giving them the dimension that they were lacking to actually balance out that offense. They're still going to run the ball a lot with Ezekiel Elliott against Atlanta, and they're terrible against running backs, both as receivers and rushers. So I think he'll see plenty of action, but I think you're definitely going to see Cooper see a lot of action the rest of the way for the Cowboys.
All right, Tyler Boyd, what about him? He was doing really well. No A.J. Green. What's your thoughts on Boyd without Green?
Yeah, they tried to float a rumor that A.J. Green might play this week. That's a pipe dream. So Tyler Boyd is the number 1 wide receiver. John Ross will be the number 2. You'll have Uzama as a tight end. They'll mix the ball all around them. Joe Mixon was a little bit on the injury report this week as well. Boyd is a wide receiver, too, with a little upside this week.
All right, Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com, answering your fantasy football questions. 609-403-0973. We've got some questions coming in for Jeff. Let's bang out a couple before Jeff gives us some guys he likes this week.
All right, Jeff, first question here. Having some trouble with the bye week, would you start Nelson Aguilar, Mike Davis, or Harris from Washington in the flex?
I would start Maurice Harris. I think he's on my sleeper list. I think that he's on the field a lot. They are really banged up at wide receiver, and he's getting a lot of PPR work. Harris is the option there.
All right, Cortland Sutton or Josh Doxson?
I'm looking for a guy who's seeing more action and more snaps. That's Cortland Sutton right now.
All right, Alex Smith, Andy Dalton, or Dak Prescott?
They're all right in the mix there. They're on the QB2 in that cluster around 15 to 20 range. I would lean towards Dak Prescott because there's a chance that Dallas may have to throw more, and he's actually producing more as of last week with Cooper.
All right, in a PPR league, Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, or Anthony Miller?
Anthony Miller is a solid sleeper. I think he's an up-and-comer, but I like him as a pickup, but not as a play this week against Minnesota. I like Fitzgerald against, again, Oakland's just terrible.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Before we go to guys, I got the Mahomes-Breeze problem. You like Mahomes against the Rams or Breeze against the Eagles? What do I do, man? I've won 6 in a row. I got to win again.
Mahomes.
Mahomes. Yeah, I played Mahomes last week. Breeze went for 40 on my bench. I can't. I'm sick to my stomach, and no one will trade me because nobody can give me back in return, man. It's like I can't just give them away, right? I can't be that guy. Like, hey, just take them. Man, that's a tough thing to be in. All right, Jeff, give us some guys, sleepers, plays, waiver wires. Who do you like this week?
Okay, a couple quick sleepers. Dalvin Cook, if he's out there, should be pickup free this week on Minnesota. He's looking to be full strength back there. Kenny Golladay, the wide receivers for Detroit are really look to be interesting this week. Kenny Golladay should see a ton of targets this week for Detroit. Because Marvin Jones might be out. If he's out, Brandon Powell is a sleeper to pick up and stash. He may be a starter very soon. I mentioned Josh Reynolds. I mentioned Rashad Penny at running back. And also, one last thing, there aren't too many deep sleepers this week, but this is the time of year with buys winding down. This is real last week of that. Pick up the backups for your starters. If your starter goes down, that will adversely impact you the most. So grab, like say, a Spencer Ware for a Kareem Hunt or a Rod Smith for a Zeke Elliott.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Week 11, get your starters in, get your bye weeks out. Jeff, good luck to you.
Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the games.